Monsters and morality. What scares us the most? The monsters underneath our bed or the monsters that are inside of our heads? This perp back with another video, and I just got done watching Monsterland Season 1. There's about 8 episodes. This is an anthology horror series on Hulu. I gotta say, man, this was definitely better than Into the Dark by a long shot. But before I get into this review, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and follow me on Twitter at perpminded420. Yeah, so let's get into it, shall we? So our first story takes place in Port Fortune, Louisiana. I probably butchered that name. And, you know, this is such an interesting series because you have all these different stories that kind of intertwine with each other, but not directly. We're introduced to our first character, Tony, and she's met by this creeper kind of serial killer type character, but also she has to deal with her daughter, which her daughter, I couldn't do it, bro. I would have fucking lost my goddamn mind. But I feel like Tony's character is going to play a huge part in this whole overall story because you see her in a couple of different episodes, so we'll have to wait and see about that. But I really like the first story. We see how hard Tony goes to, take care of her daughter. But here's where the whole, morality thing I was talking about comes into play with a lot of these different characters. It just gets to a point where people just become fed up, and I want to see more of Tony's character because, throughout this, she kind of just is embracing what she is. I'm not going to spoil that. I'm going to try not to spoil like the big twist in each episode. So episode 2, we go to Eugene, Oregon, where I think this is my least favorite, only because it's just like I was kind of confused watching this. You got this loner kid and he meets up with these shadow killers, and it was really weird. I don't really know how to think about it, but you let me know how you guys felt about this second episode if you've seen it. So then we go to New Orleans in the third episode, and this is where you see Tony once again, and she is with a specific person from the first episode, which I will not spoil, but very interesting, and I'm curious to see how that all plays out. But you have here a mother and her son, and pretty much her new boyfriend ends up being her new husband, ends up getting caught up in a scandal, and it just becomes yet again one of these morality type of stories. There's these black-eyed people, and she's having this guy in a purple suit kind of haunt her, and it's kind of hard to like really decipher each episode because they kind of leave it open-ended, so her story could continue, or who knows. Really interesting. I thought this was an okay episode. Not my favorite, but it's interesting to see Tony pop up and to see how, they deal with like kind of domestic abuse here and how it kind of passed down throughout the years, and not even her son at that age didn't really want to face up to it at first. Then we go to New York, where we kind of see corporate America, and you see this head of this oil company and how he kind of fucked up, but he's not trying to own up to the bullshit that he's done, and it kind of consumes him, and he becomes something that, he becomes a monster. Essentially, the lies and the deceiving the public is just eating away at him. There's a lot of religious undertones throughout this whole entire episode, and just to show you how greedy these people in capital can be and stuff, and it just consumes them. And I really like this episode, even though the ending was a little weird, but it kind of ties into another episode I'll talk about shortly. But before we get into that, we get into episode 5. We're in a different location. We got this lesbian couple, Sean, and I'm drawing a blank on the other chick's name, but this one kind of dealt with a lot of mental health issues, and being with somebody that has kind of mental health issues, but also there's something way more sinister that is in play throughout this whole entire episode. Like I said, not going to spoil it. Definitely go check that out and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I like this episode. Here's one of my favorite episodes as well. We go to Texas and we get introduced to a character named Sharko. He is the effects of what happened with things that happened with the oil plant blowing up or leaking. And this makes it hard for other people to kind of make a living that are fishermen and whatnot. And we get introduced to a mermaid in this episode. That's all as far as I'll go with that one, but this one became really interesting to me, and Sharko is definitely one of my favorite characters. Now this one, episode 7, was my favorite, one of my favorites, another one of my favorites I should say, Iron Lake, Michigan. And you got Rose Tico. I didn't notice her at first, but then I was like, yo, that's Rose. But she did a phenomenal job in this, and she pretty much plays this kind of self-contained type of character. She doesn't really fit in with the popular crowd. She's quiet. She has this one best friend that she really looks up to, but her best friend is kind of weirdo because she looks up to chicks in a serial killer book, and they kind of part ways. And I really like how they tell this story because there's like 3 different perspectives, or 2 or 3 different perspectives on how her friend disappears and what actually happens to her, and just the whole time skip. The one thing about time skips throughout this whole entire show is so weird because they'll do a time skip and these characters do not fucking age. It's hilarious. But this episode was really cool. It kind of dealt with being selfishness, and just dealing with parents, stuff like that, and just jealousy. A lot of different themes throughout each one of these episodes. But like I said, this one also kind of ends open-ended a little bit. Not really. There was some closure, I would say. But let's move on to the last one. And yes, they saved the best for last. We're going to New Jersey, and we're introduced to this couple that are kind of down on their luck because their child is missing. Has been missing for like 16 months, and it starts to get at them. They start to do things out of the norm. They talk about fallen angels as well in this whole entire episode, which is interesting. I'm wondering how that's going to play a bigger part in the overall story that they're trying to tell. Also, once again, Tony pops up in this episode, almost gives Brian the cheeks, but when change falls on the ground, it kind of triggers him. And it's a really sad story, but I really like the performance from these two actors and actresses. It was really dope to see that. Overall, I was really impressed and engaged on each episode. Besides, like, episode 2 was probably like my least favorite. I could skip that. But things I'm looking forward to in season 2 is, will Tony be more of a reoccurring character? Will we go to different locations? Will we see some of these characters again? I like the subtle tie-ins. It's not too obvious, but I'm wondering, how did Tony get from where she was in the first episode to New Orleans to now New Jersey? That's my biggest question. What the fuck is Tony up to? And where is Alex? Alex is a character from episode 1. When you see this, you'll know who I'm talking about. But in closing, I really enjoyed this whole entire series. I hope that it gets a season 2, because it's not necessarily try to be go out of its way to be scary, but it more so just deals with the psychological aspects of different characters and their motives, and like I said, their morals, where they stand, some good, some evil, some deceptive. There's not really any good definitive characters, in this whole entire series. I could really enjoy it, but let me know how you feel about it. If you've seen this, do you have plans to watch it? Till next time, I'm out.